Chapter 11. Monday. 4 more sleeps until the full wolf moon. Waking up to maids bustling around me at the ass crack of dawn was one of the most unpleasant experiences maybe ever. I peered through eyes that did not want to open. "What's going on?" I croaked. "What's going on?" she says. "What's going on?" It was Josephine, and it was much too early for that tone of voice. "It is the first full day of the competition, my dear girl, and we have lots to do. You will also be getting an extra class all about the shifter life. That includes how you must behave." "You mean so I don't, God forbid, piss off my kidnappers?" I snapped. Josephine clapped her hands so loudly that I cracked open one eye. "Don't you take that tone with me, little human." I groaned. "Is there any coffee around?" One of the maids hustled out, hopefully to get me some coffee. Even I didn't like being around me before coffee, especially in the morning. "You'll be taking history and etiquette classes as well as fight classes while involved in the competition," Josephine continued. "Fight classes? What on earth do I need those for?" "Never mind that right now. We have too much to do." She ripped the covers off of me, but I clung to them since I was mostly naked. The maid came back into the room with a cup of coffee and handed it to me. I took a sip and just sat there for a moment to let it work its magic. I couldn't rush it, even if I wanted to, and I didn't. I'd had no idea how in-depth this competition was going to be. History, etiquette, and fighting classes? Really? "Let's get you dressed for breakfast, Harlow, so the other girls don't have to wait." Josephine clapped her hands again. "Up, up." I heard one girl got eliminated. The maid who'd brought me coffee whispered to another. That perked me right the fuck up. "What? Who?" Josephine waved me off. "Never mind that. You don't need to think about that. Just rumors." Interesting. How could someone already have been eliminated? The maids made me dress in a form-fitting, hot yellow Kill Bill-style jumpsuit, complete with black stripes down the sides. It was so out of my comfort zone that I considered arguing. But the warning look that Josephine gave me told me not to bother. Better pick the battles that got me out of here. "Let's go," Josephine snapped from the doorway. I marched out with my team into the red and gold hallway with Josephine behind me, blocking the way to my room and preventing me from checking my phone again in private. Maybe Mom had texted me, but had been too pissed at me to do it right away. As long as she was okay, I could live with her anger. Breakfast was served in the dining room, and when I walked into the formal surroundings with sterling silver and crystal goblets, the high-end extravagance put me completely out of ease. Thankfully, though, there were fruits, breads, cheeses, and cooked bacon and sausage spread over the table. I knew that I needed to eat because I hadn't had anything the night before, and dinner could be raw again. All the other ladies were already there, dressed similar to me. Jenny had left a seat open for me beside her, and I smiled at her gratefully as I sat. The rest of them ignored me, buzzing with conversation. "What did I miss?" I asked Jenny. She leaned in conspiratorially as she spread her napkin across her lap. "One of the girls went home this morning." "Wait, we could just do that? Like, right now?" "Who was it?" I said as I looked around the table. I barely remembered all the women's names, but there were now only 9 of us seated around the table. "It was Kat," Sloane said with a nasty little smile. "Kat? What happened?" I asked. "Did she do something?" Amelia, a stone-cold fox of a redhead, picked up her crystal goblet full of something red. I think there's a little more to it than... Sloane elbowed her hard in the ribs. You better keep your mouth shut, or your family will probably end up missing as well. I blinked. What? Sloane looked at me, clearly alarmed, and then glanced around the room. Harlow, shut up. You have no idea what you're talking about, as usual, and I don't want a bullseye on me. I shot her a brittle smile. I just don't understand how Kat leaving has anything to do with the wolf killings. Was she killed too? Sloane gazed at me with a cold warning in her eyes. How do you know about the wolf killings? My maid told me all about it, I said, shrugging. She nodded slowly. Well, since you aren't one of us, I don't think you should be allowed to know the inner workings of our pack. Good thing I wasn't asking you, I said as calmly as I could. Jenny sighed. Wolves have been going missing, and you've obviously heard of the wolf killings on top of that. Her voice dropped to a whisper, her eyes darting toward the doorway like she wanted to be sure nobody else overheard. Well, Kat left this morning because her entire family turned up dead. I gasped. What happened? She shrugged and speared a bacon strip on her plate with her fork. Dunno. Wolves have been showing up murdered for a while now, and we don't know who's doing it. Wasn't Kat with Stride last night? Olivia asked, smoothing her ice-colored hair away from her face. The one with the sparkly blue dress and scarf. Another girl, Maria, nodded. I saw them leave the ball together. What do you mean Kat was with Stride last night? Sloane hissed across the table. Olivia, whose jumpsuit practically swallowed her tiny frame, pushed her plate away. I overheard them talking. After the things Stride said to her, I assumed they spent the night together. Liar, hissed Sloane. Olivia rolled her eyes. I'm not, but whatever. How dare you insinuate that Stride slept with Kat? Sloane said, a flush creeping up her neck. He would never do that. And he'd propositioned me, too. Had even appeared in my dreams. But I wasn't about to admit the latter. Maybe you don't know Stride as well as you think you do, Sloane. Fuck off, you nobody, Sloane said to me, and then jabbed her fork in Olivia's direction. You're just spreading rumors. I hate to break it to you, honey, but this isn't high school. Olivia fired back. I threw her a grateful look. She's right, on all counts. The reason I think she went to his room is because he asked me first, and I turned him down. So I'm just assuming she said yes, and that's what happened. Sloane burst out laughing. Stride invited you to his room? You actually expect us to believe that you, of all people, were invited to his room? You've got a little jealousy hanging from your lip there, girl, I told her. Her glossy pink mouth flopped open. I have zero reason to be jealous of you. Jenny held up her hands. Hey, stop. It's no reason to attack each other. Let's focus on what's important instead of attacking each other. Sloane kept glaring at me while the other ladies buzzed with conversation. I robotically went through the motions of eating some food while thinking about Kat and her family. I couldn't wrap my head around any of it. It was exactly how Annecy had explained it. Someone was killing wolves. Who, though? And what did it all mean? The way Sloane was acting, it was like anyone who even talked about it could be next. Was my life in danger? And not just because I was human who knew the great big secret about wolf shifters? What about Mom, though? The only thing keeping me calm was knowing she wasn't a wolf. She had nothing to do with any of this, so there would be no reason for anybody to mess with her. So why hadn't she answered my text? Guess who the only student in shifter history class was? Little old me. Apparently, I was the only one who needed it, which, as the only human, made sense. Luckily, history class was the one academic thing I was good at. My professors were typically males, old enough to exhale dust, and for whatever reason, they sure liked to focus on all the great and powerful men in history. So, I think I was good at history, mostly out of spite. Josephine was my teacher, the wolf expert known for barking at me, dressing me, and now teaching me. After breakfast, she joined us in the dining room. The other ladies filed out to their next training lesson, most of them snickering at me. Their loss. This was where the food was, and when Josephine glanced down at her notes, I filled my pockets for later. One thing you might not be aware of is how the alpha chooses their mate, she began. I held my hand up. Josephine looked at me, seeming surprised and then pleased. Yes, Harlow? From the wolf shifter books I've read, I said. I thought mates were chosen for males, like they didn't have a choice. Call it instinct or an imprint, but finding a mate was supposed to be like destiny. A knowing smile spread across her face, diminishing how severe her tight bun made her look. Some think the idea of fated mates is just a legend. Maybe it's silly of me, but I genuinely think they're real. Soulmates, the perfect pairing for the heart and soul. A mate written in the stars. It's all very romantic, but despite what I think, they're rare. Though I have heard of it happening before. Oh, I said, disappointed. I wanted it to be an everyday thing, so I didn't have to be here anymore. Stride and Sloane could realize they were fated mates, and everyone else could just go home, including me, so I could have a happily ever after too. See, Josephine continued, when it comes to finding a mate, other males can pick whoever they deem fit, as long as it's not someone an alpha has already chosen. Alphas, on the other hand, don't date like regular people. They have competitions, like the one you're in. It ensures that they have the most perfect, well-rounded woman they can find. But if they're not soulmates, I wondered aloud, can they divorce? Josephine went completely still. Her beady eyes narrowed, and I suddenly felt like there was a bullseye on my forehead. She cleared her throat and shook herself a little. I'm sure there can be some difficulties to starting a life you're not used to, but people adapt. The shifter life is a good one, especially as the alpha's wife. Still sounded like a loveless marriage to me. Josephine went on about the alpha wolf's coloring, which was snow white, and how they were typically chosen because of their family bloodline. She also explained that shifters shift for the first time during the first full moon after they hit puberty. After that, a full moon wasn't required for shifting. They could do it whenever they wanted. It was all really interesting stuff that I was still digesting on my way to my next class, which was fighting with wolf shifters. Good God. To stall and to continue my search for a way out of here, I bent down to tie my already tied shoe in the hallway. A sparkly piece of blue fabric caught my eye from the inside of a large, ornate vase I crouched next to. Odd place to stash something so pretty. I reached inside the vase to investigate. then gasped at the huge bloodstain on the fabric. A blue, sparkly scarf, just like the one Kat had worn last night. But Jenny said Kat's family had been murdered. Kat's bloody scarf indicated something else, something just as sinister had happened to Kat herself. A shiver chased up my back. Swallowing thickly, I made sure I was alone in the hallway. Other than the two guards by the front door about 20 feet behind me, it was just me. I folded the scarf to hide the blood and then stuffed it down the front of my jumpsuit. This was evidence. The police needed to see this. And I could also use it to back up my story of being kidnapped and what other nefarious things were happening here. I raced back to my room. When I dove for the bedside table for my phone, though, it wasn't there. My only way out of here was gone. Chapter 12. Dazed, panicked, I entered what I guessed passed as a gym or a training center for shifters on the other side of the ballroom. I'd hidden the bloody scarf in the only place I could think of, inside an old plastic bag in my bathroom's toilet tank. No one would go looking there. As for my phone, anyone could have taken it, including Annecy, whom I hadn't seen all day. Did she do it? But I thought she was my friend, or at least one of the only people here close to a friend. Friend or not, it sure seemed that if Kat, a shifter, had been hurt, or worse, killed, any one of us could be on the literal chopping block. So, who was next? And who was doing the chopping? My mind a swirling mess of unease, I dragged myself toward the boxing ring in the gym center. Heavy bags hung in one corner, and various weapons were lined up on the wall beside them. All of this in the family home? What's next? A bowling alley? The other ladies were already there and waiting, clustered together in front of the boxing ring and chattering excitedly. I guessed I wasn't the only one who needed fighting training, but then I doubted they needed a ton of history lessons about their kind. Maybe this was a way of leveling the playing field, giving everyone as fair a chance as possible before we were plucked out of existence one by one. I approached them as they giggled and talked about how they'd spent their first lesson horseback riding with Stride. What? You guys were with Stride? I blurted, even though I wasn't part of the conversation. Not that I cared, because I didn't. That just blew my leveling the playing field theory out of the water, though. If they spent more time with Stride, how was I supposed to make enough of an impression for him to choose me, and thus save my life? Because it was marry him or die. And I sure didn't like my chances either way. Sloane looked smug as she turned to me, her eyes cold and hard despite the fake smile she flashed. You missed out, it seems. Have fun with your history lesson? Yeah, actually, I did. Oh, what do you have to worry about, Harlow? She cooed. I thought you already had a personal relationship with Stride, the kind that makes him invite you back to his room. She laughed as though she were the funniest person in the world. Whatever. It was fine if she thought I was angry about missing out with Stride, but I was a little pissed I missed out on the horses. I liked them. They scared the poop out of me, but I still liked them. Welcome, everyone. I turned around to see a man built like a truck striding into the room. Broad shoulders, ripped, 8-pack stomach visible because he'd forgotten a shirt, beefy body, a beard, and a booming voice to match his overwhelming physical presence. He reminded me of a Viking from TV. "My name is Ferdinand," he said as he approached, "and I'm going to teach you the fine art of fighting. Being part of a shifter family can sometimes lead to dangerous situations. You might not have the option of or the time to shift, so you need to be properly trained as a fighter, just in case. Having said that, you will remain in human form throughout the course of the lessons, so we can see what skill sets you have and what you need to work on." I breathed a sigh of relief, thankful that we were working in human form, considering that was my only form. Part of learning to fight means you will have to spar with others. He stood with his hands behind his back, his feet planted shoulder-width apart as he looked us over one at a time. His entire presence, his energy, all of it made me stand up a little taller and listen harder than before. I had no idea why, though, since I didn't need or want his approval. Must be a male wolf shifter thing. And their varying effects on me. Some much more so than others. Like Ames, for example. I might just beg for his approval, even though I should be pissed at him for putting me in this situation. And I was, but probably not as much as I should have been. Ferdinand scratched the side of his gray jogging pants. "You can't be prepared for an opponent in the outside world if you have never practiced. I will train you to expect the unexpected and to walk out of a fight victorious." He looked around the room before motioning for Ella and Maria to come to him. "We'll start with you two," he decided. "I want you to get in the ring and show us what you know about sparring." I almost laughed, because seriously, who randomly knows about sparring? But the women climbed into the ring and faced each other like they'd done this before, assuming their fighting stances. Fuck. I was in way over my head. "Go," Ferdinand shouted. I moved closer to the ring as the two sparred. They were so fluid together. As one backed up, the other one moved forward, perfectly synchronized. One would strike with a cross or a jab, and the other would immediately block. They were both so well trained that it took a minute before either of them made contact. Ella moved in quickly and jabbed at Maria. As Maria blocked the punch, Ella came in with a hook to the side of her head. The hit took Maria right off her feet, and she hit the mat. Hard. I sighed. If I had to guess, all the shifters had already been trained, and I would end up the odd girl out. I was about to get absolutely destroyed. Ferdinand clapped and beamed at the girls with pride. I raised my hand. "Excuse me?" He stopped and turned to me. Everyone else did too. Maria got up from the mat, rubbing the side of her head while she eyed me closely. "Yes, Harlow?" "What is it?" Ferdinand asked. It's pretty obvious that everyone has been well trained. The obvious ending of that sentence trailed off, except me. "So, what's the point in training?" "I can understand your concern," Ferdinand said, "but for a shifter, every day should include some type of fight training. These classes are to show what type of skills you all have and how quickly you take to new ones. Keep in mind, you are always being watched." Wow. So not creepy at all. My eyes widened before I flicked my gaze around the room, looking for cameras. If they were there, they were well hidden. "Having said that," Ferdinand said, pointing at me, "it's your turn." Gulp. "Mine? I don't have a clue," Sloane snickered. "Oh, really?" "This is an opportunity for me to assess your skill level, even if it's 0, Ferdinand said. Enter the ring. Sloane, go with her. Oh, Jesus. A triumphant smile spread over Sloane's face, and I knew I was in for a beating. I'd never been in a fight. Confrontation wasn't really my thing, and it was hard to piss people off with my nose buried in a book or my legs running laps around a track. Resigned, I hoisted myself up and into the ring. I knew enough to keep my hands up as much as possible, or I'd get knocked out. The end. That's all I knew. When Ferdinand shouted, "Go," Sloane swept my leg out and took me right off my feet. Now, Harlow, can you guess why that happened? Ferdinand asked. I have no idea, I gritted out, hauling myself to my feet again. Fighter stance. That means you have to stand a certain way so you're not taken off balance. Standing as if you're having a conversation leaves you in a weak and vulnerable state. He moved to stand with his feet shoulder-width apart, one slightly behind the other. A fighter stance, he continued, is where one foot is almost behind the other. You're stabilized here. Your weight is leaning on your back leg, and it would take a lot of power to take you off your feet again. You want to rock back and forth on your feet, not keep them planted, so you can move quickly. Got it? I positioned myself just like he showed me, and when he yelled "go" again, Sloane came at me immediately. She peppered me with jabs like rapid fire. I could barely get a swing in myself. The best thing I could do was try to block her attack with my forearms. If we were in a genuine fight, I would be in rough shape. Ferdinand called the fight and then turned to me. It appears as if we have a lot of work to do. Yeah, well, I warned you, I said, between sucking in more air. He laughed. So you did. He worked with me one-on-one for almost an hour while the other girls sparred in the ring. He showed me how to throw a proper punch, a jab, cross, and a hook, each one used for different attacks. He showed me how to properly block a punch by raising my elbow so that I wouldn't take a shot to my ear. If I did, my bell would get rung, as he'd put it, and that would cause a lot of damage. Fighting was very much like a dance, an art form, and it was easy to move fluidly when you knew what you were doing. Easy for him to say. I wiped my brow of sweat. I couldn't remember the last time I felt this tired, but we were nowhere near finished, and I didn't feel any more skilled than at the beginning of training. He put me back into the ring, this time with Jenny, who wasn't immediately out to destroy me. I moved backwards instinctively, worried I was going to get hit. Jenny moved with me and overpowered me, throwing jabs as I backed away. I blocked them just fine, but the idea of being the first one to initiate a punch intimidated me. I was a lover, not a fighter. But she was coming towards me, way too confident. I stepped to the side and moved forward, hitting her with a cross. She didn't seem to be expecting anything from me, so she didn't block. I struck her on the side of the face. It wasn't a straight hit, so it glanced off the side of her head. She stepped back and looked at me with surprise. "Nice, girl," she said, and she sounded genuine. Thanks. A weird feeling, being complimented for smacking someone. Clapping came from the side of the ring, and I stopped, wondering why Ferdinand would be clapping. My mouth dropped open when I saw Stride and Ames standing there watching us. Stride raised a single eyebrow, while Ames bit back a smile. They'd seen me fighting. Scratch that. They'd seen me trying to fight. Perfect. Just perfect. Chapter 13. Stride meandered nearer, grinning like the cat that ate the cream. It made me want to try my newfound skills out on him, on both of them, even though Ames hung back and watched us closely. Under the weight of Ames's gaze, I remembered last night's dream. The good parts, when I thought it was him, and I felt my cheeks flame. "I'm a little bit impressed, Harlow," Stride said. "I didn't know you had it in you." I tore my gaze away from Ames and licked my lips. "Gee, thanks. No one expects you to be perfect at this. Mind if I give you some advice?" I shrugged, thinking I probably didn't have much of a choice. "Shoot. Crouch more, and hold your fists up higher. You want to be looking through them. That way, you're always protected. It can seem awkward at first, but you'll get used to it." I gritted out a smile I didn't feel. "Thanks." I glanced at Ames, but he had turned around and was talking to Ferdinand and some of the other ladies. "I could help you a bit." Stride pointed confidently at the ring. "If you want." I raised my eyebrows. Sure." Sloane looked like she was about to spit nails at me. If anything, her reaction convinced me this was the right thing to do. Even if I got clobbered, which I probably would. "All right, let's go," Stride ordered. "Back in the ring." Sighing, I followed after Stride and then stood there awkwardly while waiting for instruction. He faced me, bouncing up and down on the balls of his feet. "You think the others are fully trained? You think they have a step up from you? Well, they don't know this." "Know what?" "The spinning back fist. It's quick, badass, and can completely take out your opponent. Have you ever watched UFC?" No." "Okay, first, go into your fighter stance." I did so, crouching lower so it looked like I was about to take a piss and lifting my fists higher. He nodded in approval. "Yes, good. All right, now the movement of the spinning back fist is to trick your opponent. Make him think that you're doing something else, and then hit him." "Okay," I said, even though I had no idea what he was talking about. "Take a step forward as if you're about to throw a jab, but instead, kick your right leg off to the side." As he spoke, he demonstrated. "Spin your body around, positioning yourself beside your opponent, and while you do, throw your other arm around in a straight line to connect with your opponent's face." I stared at him, slack-jawed. He might as well have been speaking Greek, for all the sense he made. He grinned, his photoshopped teeth glinting in the fluorescence. "Got it?" I laughed. "Absolutely not." "Okay, watch." He put himself in fighting position again, and then spun around, executing the move flawlessly without actual contact to my face. He was so fast, everything happened in seconds. "Yeah, what makes you think I can do that?" "You can if you try. Show me." "I'll try it," Sloane said, putting her hand up. Her eyes cut to me and flashed like she was about to implode. "I want Harlow to try," he said without even looking at her. "All right. If you think you can handle it," I teased. He chuckled and then walked me through the motions all over again from beginning to end. I watched carefully how he executed each move and copied him until I thought I had it down. "Now, for real, Harlow, try not to knock my teeth out," he said. Right. As if there was any chance of that happening. In my fighting position, I envisioned what I was supposed to do. Then I stepped forward quickly, spinning off to his side. I swung my fist toward Stride's face, just barely grazing his nose before I stopped myself from hitting him. I stopped and stared at him dumbfounded. Had that really just happened? His expression of appreciation told me it had. So I whooped excitedly and pumped my arms. I did it! Nice job. He reached for me to pull me in for a hug, but I ducked away from him without really meaning to. I wasn't in the habit of hugging alphas who didn't seem all that bothered by one of the contestants going home early from this sham of a marriage contest. He didn't look fazed one bit. He dropped his arms and tilted his head, a sharp V forming between his blonde brows. Did I? Stride. We both turned around to find Connolly in the room motioning for Stride to come over. Ames, take over here. Stride left me in the ring and hopped down to the floor, making his way over to his dad. My body felt Ames drawing closer before my eyes did, and it was suddenly a lot harder for me to breathe normally. Should I do the spinning back fist again? I asked, trying and failing to keep cool. He scoffed, with a side-eyed glance towards Stride's retreating form. No, that was just a flashy stunt. It's not useful in a real fight. Your opponent will see it coming. Good to know. I leaned in closer to whisper to him, and maybe to sniff him a little too, inhaling all of his violet and thunderstorm sea spray. Someone took my phone. I hid it and everything. We're being watched. Keep talking while we spar, he said as he moved behind me, putting his hands on my waist, legs farther apart for a more stable center of gravity. My eyes popped open as that same electrically charged feeling coursed through my body and yanked on that tugging sensation inside my chest. How could someone I barely knew make me have some kind of biological meltdown every time he touched me, during a marriage competition to marry his adopted cousin? But he was right. While Stride and Connolly spoke, the girls and Ferdinand watched us. Sloane wore a weird look on her face that I couldn't quite read. I tried to school my expression and control my ragged thoughts, but it was damn hard with him so close. Arms up. His hand glided from my waist to my arm, and hot currents fizzed behind his trailing fingertips and underneath my skin. You keep dropping them. I can't be near you when you touch me like this, Ames, I whispered, but it sounded like a moan. He circled around to face me, his blue eyes bright while he lifted my elbows higher by my face. Then punch me. Don't tempt me, I warned. Use speed to your advantage. Go light and fast on your feet as you weave toward me, and then out while you tell me about your phone. He threw a wide jab at my head that wasn't even close to connecting, and then jerked back, his feet constantly moving us in a circle. He glided like water, his muscled body flowing beautifully. His black athletic pants rode low on his hips, and his black short-sleeve shirt showed off his intricate tattoos I longed to memorize. I tried to keep pace with him, throwing hooks and punches that never connected, while I bobbed in and out. It's not just my phone. I found Kat's bloody scarf this morning, the one she was wearing at the ball last night. His jaw stiffened. What? I know that the rumor is she went home because her family was murdered, but I think the truth is even more brutal than that. He circled us in the other direction, weaving in toward me and out again, and threw double hooks into the air. You think she was murdered? Or hurt? I don't know. Who would do that? Stride? She left with him after the ball. He stopped then, glancing at the floor of the gym. Fuck, we've been talking too long to look normal. Stalk away like you're furious at me, like you hate me. He brought my fists up higher and shook them like he was angry. Keep these up. Shivering at his touch, I stared at the way his full lips parted, and at the different colors swirling in his blue eyes that grew darker when his long lashes feathered over them, at the perfect cut of his jaw, already dusted with a 5 o'clock shadow. "But I don't hate you," I said. "I should, but I don't." He inhaled sharply, like a heavy weight had just been lifted. "Do it, Harlow. Make them believe it." I guess it was a problem that I was panting like a dog over a man who wasn't the alpha in front of everyone. I yanked away from him. "Stop touching me, pervert! Just stop!" The faintest smile twitched over Ames's lips while I fled. I lifted the rope of the ring and hopped down to the floor, ignoring the shocked looks the ladies were giving me. I didn't even dare look at Sloane. Hopefully I'd get a chance to snoop a little before whatever ridiculous thing was planned for later. Find my phone, find someone else's phone, find Kat's body, or at least more clues, find an unguarded exit and run. I stalked out of the gym, closed the door behind me, headed down the deserted hallway, and was about to turn the corner when I heard voices. Holding my breath, I stopped and leaned against the wall. When I peered around the corner, I found Connolly and Stride talking. No, not talking. More like arguing. "Do you hear me, Stride?" Connolly hissed. "I want you to do it, or I swear you're going to be sorry." "Don't fucking threaten me, Dad." "You'll know when I'm threatening you, you goddamn moron. Just do it, and get the hell out of my face." What was going on? Were they talking about Kat? Unless I turned back, passing them was the only way out of here. So I did turn back because I didn't know what else to do. Before I made it safely inside the gym, a voice called out from the other end of the hallway. "Come here, Harlow. I'd like to speak to you." Connolly's voice. Caught red-handed as the eavesdropper I was, I turned and faced him, swallowing hard. My pulse ricocheted between my ears as I slowly walked up to him. He scared the crap out of me, and I didn't like that I was alone with him. "I was just going to my room," I said. Holding me in his sights, around a cloud of cigar smoke, he murmured, "You heard us, did you?" "No, I didn't. I just needed a break from everything," I blurted lamely. He looked me over as I neared him, his stare hard and probing as though looking for information. I wasn't about to tell him shit. "How are you enjoying your time here, Harlow?" "Well, it's completely different from what I expected, but I'm learning a lot." "It wasn't exactly a lie, was it?" "That's good. You want to stay here, don't you?" I stared up at him and wondered if that was a threat, because it somehow sounded like a threat. Yes, I put too much bite behind that one word, and if I were him, I wouldn't believe me either. He nodded. "You remind me of someone I used to know." I blinked, surprised. "Who?" "A woman I knew a long time ago," he murmured around his cigar as he looked at me over again. "The resemblance is uncanny." "Who?" I asked again, my voice firm and unyielding. He puffed on his cigar and exhaled right into my face. "Fucking fucker." I didn't give him the satisfaction of reacting in any way. His stony, unfriendly expression, paired with his probing stare, made me wish very much that I'd been quicker to hide myself. I didn't like the idea of being under this guy's watchful eye, especially if he took special interest in me. "Harlow!" Connolly flicked his cold gray stare over my shoulder. I followed his gaze and found Ames at the end of the hallway by the gym, unease flickering bright in his eyes as he stormed closer. When he drew nearer, he put himself between me and Connolly, angling his body toward me in a protective stance. "Is there a problem here?" Only you would think there's a problem here. Connolly spat. The air between them vibrated with tension and distrust. Ferdinand wants you now, Ames told me. Let's go. Thank God. It's good to feel wanted. A wolfish grin cut across Connolly's face. Isn't it? Yeah, even that sounded like a threat. I couldn't get away from him fast enough. Once inside the gym again with Ames, I finally took a deep breath. The first since I'd seen Connolly. Ames shut the door behind us, concern carved into his face. Are you okay? I put my hand to my chest to keep my heart from ringing so loudly between my ears. I'm not sure why, but Connolly can be a little terrifying. I want you to stay away from him, Harlow, he said, his voice a low warning. There's no reason you need to be talking to him. Why? Is he the killer? He closed his eyes briefly and looked away. I just don't want you around him. Because he's dangerous? Tell me, I demanded. Just do as I say. He grunted, then turned to leave again. I gaped after him. If I wanted to hear from an asshole, I would fart. His wide shoulders spasmed as laughter shook through him, and he slowly turned around, his blue eyes sparkling with humor. It quickly faded, though, because once again, we were being watched by Ferdinand and my fellow contestants. It's best that you hate me, he told me, his voice low so only I could hear. You keep ordering me around, and that won't be so hard, I said, crossing my arms. Connolly Ames. Is he dangerous? Without answering, he left. I huffed out a breath, my nerves blistering with heated rage and an unleashed sexual drive that had hit a dead end. Since I needed to hurl something other than my fists, I threw a tall stool sitting next to a weight bench against the door, wedging it underneath the handles so we'd have no more. Chapter 14. Tuesday, 3 more sleeps until the full wolf moon. No! I screamed as I tore out of one of the worst dreams I'd ever experienced. I sat up breathing heavily, as if I had run an entire track meet in one go. My t-shirt was drenched in sweat. I slowly lay back down on the pillow and closed my eyes. The dream was so vivid and so violent. I rarely had nightmares, but when I did, they never felt that real. I rubbed my stomach, feeling slightly ill at the memory of it. I could have sworn it had all been happening for real. Sex and murder. How could the two link together to create a dream I would likely never forget? I had been in the woods again, searching desperately for a way out, just like the last dream I'd had. I arrived at the same clearing as I had before, one had ended with my own scream. Now I looked around the room frantically, feeling lost and scared. Harlow, are you all right? Annecy came into my room, her fist poised over the door for a knock I hadn't heard. I rubbed at my eyes and winced at the sandpaper feel of them. I was exhausted, not having gotten enough sleep yet again. What? Do you have a baby monitor on me or something? I wouldn't have been surprised if so. Annecy shook her head with a light chuckle as she pulled her blue plushy robe tighter around her shoulders. Wolf shifters have great hearing. You screamed. Is everything okay? I had another dream, worse than the last one, I admitted. I'm sorry, she said, sitting on the bed next to me and taking my hand. Do you need anything? Wine? Something stronger? I took a deep breath and released it slowly, siphoning out all the bad, or at least trying to. No, I'm good. Thanks. Do you want to tell me about the dream? It was actually similar to the last one, but bloody this time. Annecy's perfectly sculpted brows rose. Bloody? Yeah. Same dream, except it ended with Stride killing me. Pretty messed up, right? Yeah, Annecy said, frowning. You still believe that my dreams are prophecies? Annecy met my gaze and smiled, though it didn't touch her green eyes. I do. So, you think Stride is going to kill someone? Or that he already did? I didn't add. No, I didn't say that. Sometimes dreams send a message, but they aren't literal. It could simply mean someone will die, but not necessarily by Stride's hand. Like Kat, or her family, if she really wasn't dead. Or, I gasped, a sudden heaviness dropping into my stomach. Maybe it's about my mom. Why do you say that? She asked. I've tried to contact her a few times, and she didn't respond, which is not like her at all. She would never ignore me, especially since she hasn't seen me in days. I'm wondering if something happened to her. I turned to her and tightened my hold on her hand. But my phone, Annecy, it's gone. Wait, she said, shaking her head. What are you talking about? What phone? No contestant is allowed to have one. Who gave you a phone? No one. Harlow. She glared down her delicate nose at me and gave me a look like she wasn't buying the bullshit I was selling. Okay, so I'm lying. I don't want to get this person in trouble, but the point is, my mom never answered me, and now my phone is gone. Well, maybe the person who gave it to you stole it back so you wouldn't get in trouble. Harlow, there are rules in this competition, rules that have been in place for the Full Moon Games for hundreds of years, if not longer, that all packs must follow. She blew out a heavy breath when she must have seen from my face that I had a strict policy to never follow rules. With that said, though, maybe I could have someone look in on your mom for you. I gasped. You do that? For me? Just the idea of her helping me figure out my mom's situation stung my eyes. I know what it's like to worry about family. My sister is, well, she's something else. She glanced at the clock on the bedside table and pursed her lips. It's almost time for you to wake up. How about you get in the shower, and I'll have an extra large cup of coffee waiting for you when you get out. I see what you're doing, Annecy, I said, already feeling the tension draining from my shoulders. You're making me want to marry you instead. She laughed as she got up and strode toward the door. So you've caught on to my plan, have you? Is it working? Definitely. At breakfast in the dining room, I sat beside Jenny. Not everyone was there yet, but the ones who were questioned what the day's events would be. Sloane thought it was going to be a physical challenge, something that would test the training we'd had yesterday. Jenny believed it was going to be some kind of puzzle we'd have to solve. I didn't have the energy for anything physical, so I was hoping fighting would be off the table for the day. Maybe they would allow us to have a book challenge. Was that too much to ask? Ella stumbled into the dining room then, but didn't immediately sit. She looked around her, stricken and wide-eyed. You all right? I asked her. It's Every. She's missing. They don't know where she is, she said in a rush. What? I whispered. The other girls gasped. Every was a quiet woman with jet black hair, tawny, glowy skin, and brilliant green eyes. I hadn't talked to her much, though I really didn't talk to many of the girls. Ella, what are you talking about? Jenny asked. How do you know this? I just spoke to Josephine. Avery's room is in tatters. Her things have been thrown all around, but there's no sign of her. She just up and disappeared. No one has seen her since dinner last night. I looked at Jenny, who met my gaze. I knew what she was thinking. Were we all at risk of going missing? It seemed like the women in this competition were disappearing one after another. Why, though? It didn't make any sense. Obviously, not all of us could be Stride's chosen bride. But was that an excuse to make us disappear? I guessed so, particularly if it was one of us here in this room picking off the competition. But who? Are we in danger? Jenny asked, no one in particular. The rest of the ladies went silent, all seemingly lost in their own thoughts. No one wanted to answer that question. But it was definitely on all of our minds, especially if Avery wasn't just missing, but dead. The thought of Kat's bloodied scarf needled cold, icy dread up my spine. Were the two things linked? And if so, what did it mean? The room now buzzed with the news of the second missing girl. What were Stride and Connolly going to do about it? Probably nothing, if they were directly involved. And what was I going to do about it? The only human in a literal den of wolves. Josephine entered then, her face paler than death, and the room stilled. As you may have already heard, Avery has gone missing. We are putting in every effort to find her and make sure that nothing happened to her. The competition we had planned for today is canceled as we deal with this serious matter. Instead, we are planning to have a moon run at twilight, so please prepare for that. She hurried from the room, her normally tight, pristine bun falling half loose around her shoulders. The poor woman was barely keeping it together. Kat's bloodied scarf I'd hidden in the back of my toilet kept haunting my thoughts. I should throw it out. What if someone found it in my room? Would they blame me for the disappearance of her and Avery? The optics wouldn't look great, that was for sure. I swallowed hard. Yet, other than my word, that was the only evidence I had about what was really happening here. Still, I could find someplace else for it at the very least. Slowly, the conversation around the table turned to the pack run. Was I supposed to join in the run too? Probably so. Finally, something I was good at, except I only had 2 legs instead of 4. Everyone, including me, picked at the large spread of breakfast foods. Jenny sipped the ice water in her crystal goblet and then leaned closer. What do you think happened to her? I don't know, but I feel like there's an enemy in our midst. I picked up my fork and nervously twirled it between my fingers while I peered around the table at the other ladies. And maybe the enemy is closer than we think.